Greetings, Old World Explorers. Welcome to another exploration into the evidence that still remains, and some of it no longer remains, of the Old World. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Hartford, Connecticut. And this city offers many gems for us to take a look at. And before we dive into the visuals, I would like to share with you this quote from a Henry Bergson. Fortunately, some are born with spiritual immune systems that sooner or later give rejection to the illusory worldview grafted upon them from birth through social conditioning. They begin sensing that something is amiss and start looking for answers. Inner knowledge and anomalous outer experiences show them a side of reality others are oblivious to, and so begins their journey of awakening. Each step of the journey is made by following the heart instead of following the crowd, and by choosing knowledge over the veils of ignorance. And I do believe that is what we are embarking on in this old world journey. And let's begin with the iconic Soldiers and Sailors Monument Arch, supposedly erected in 1886, and screaming old world at us, quite obvious, still standing to this day, 130 plus years later. Something to keep in mind with so many of these structures that do still stand, not having compromised foundations, all of the underground work according to the way that we build today, if we transplant that onto the past, all still very well intact for something that was done in the 1800s. And the amount of work that goes into these structures, these modern day, to create a very stable foundation is done with very heavy hydraulic equipment to ensure that there's a stable foundation, a stable base for all these structures that we build today. So this is an aspect of the old world that's often overlooked. How are these still standing in such perfect form so many years later? Something to keep in mind. Of course, we have a Luna Park here in Hartford. And just a little bird's eye view of a main thoroughfare in the city of Hartford. Let's take a look at the population demographic. And I gotta tell you, I was expecting more numbers-wise out of Hartford. You see here the population. Now this would be the area that we're zoning in on, 1860-ish up into this time frame here. Actually, 1920, the population exceeding the current population of 120,000. But this city never really reaching what I would have thought. I would have estimated this to be at least double the size of what it is, especially for what we're about to look at. So keep that in mind, the population demographics of the area for the time, and just transplant that onto what you're seeing here, and you know, superimpose one over the other. Does it make sense to you? I think more and more people are waking up to these anomalies. And it's very encouraging. I've actually recently come across several accounts that I'd never seen before. Relatively new accounts. I guess mine is relatively new as well. But I think there's more and more people bringing their angle to this old world research, and I find it very encouraging and exciting that this exploration is growing, because that's how we're going to get to the bottom of it. We get more boots on the ground. We get more people with their area of expertise that they've begun to question, lending what they do know to the situation. Look, here we have a YMCA, turret style, a couple turrets, couldn't just have the one. I think this is an old city hall, previous city hall or state house. I wasn't exactly sure on that. If you're from the area, please clarify for me. We're going to get into the current State House soon enough, state capital, something else. But let's take a look at some more of old Hartford. Less than 100,000 people living here at the time, but of course 3, 4, 5, 6-story buildings with all sorts of ornamental architecture. No big deal. And of course you have the Aetna Life Insurance Company, Hartford, known for being a center of life insurance companies, I suppose. Does this make any sense to you? Can you imagine building the structure modern day? What that would entail? but no, this was up in the 1800s. This supposedly also an Aetna life insurance, 1895. Here it is from another angle, reminding me of a building I've seen in New Orleans actually, but this architecture repeats itself. Screaming old world architecture. There we have the arch again with the bridge built in. They must have been master stone bridge makers at the time. We've obviously lost that ability. Takes quite a bit of skill to put something like that together. And some of these pictures I had to dig fairly deep for, like this one, an old synagogue, Beth Israel Synagogue. I think there's another one with the same name you'll see later in the file. So if you're going to be checking out your area, keep an eye out for these types of buildings. We're looking for the brick or the concrete facade, arched windows. Take a look along the lower levels. Get your camera out, throw it online. People want to see this stuff. It's a very interesting topic, and it doesn't jive with our historical narrative. So the more visuals, the more eyes we get on it, the better. This interesting too, police station. This one difficult to find as well. You're going to see a lot of postcards, and I've said this in previous videos. If you're seeing a postcard, usually I have tried to find a photograph, and I just wasn't able to locate one. So this is what I have for you. This one as well, the scientific building at Trinity College. How scientific is that? What a structure. And of course you have the evidence of there being a deep foundation because we've got windows down in the dirt. And even smaller ones like this, the Elks Memorial, you look a little closer, you will see evidence everywhere. The State Armory, built like a stone fortress. New City Hall, very ornamental looking upper columns. You see this quite often in old world buildings where the columns are not necessarily at ground level but up top. Quite the feat of building architecture, all the rest of it. You'll see this one a little later on, Wadsworth Athenaeum, and then the Morgan Memorial and Municipal Building. Remember again the size of this. I know there's history in Connecticut. A lot of what you see in these areas of North America is explained away to the length of time on the allowed for this development on the eastern seaboard. But you will find if you dig into the origins of many of these buildings, if you can find the origins, that most of these again having gone up between 1880 and 1920. Well, let's not say 1920, pre-World War I, let's say. That being a major hinge point in our historical narrative. I heard an interesting blurb on this video yesterday from Michelle Gibson, explaining the history of Hollywood and movies and the early days of movies and how there were major filmmaking studios in France and Germany pre-World War I, and those were actually decimated in World War I, and after World War I all we really had was the Hollywood location. So I found that to be interesting. Of course, Hollywood playing a major part in our historical deceptive narrative. The Hollywood Western and all the sort of novels that come with that, and novels morphing into movies and TV shows in the early to middle part of the century, of the 20th century. And in this day and age, if you're into this research or if you're just getting into it, we are in the process of unlearning what we've been deceived about, peeling back the lies, in so doing trying to get closer to the truth. We don't claim to know any truth or have a handle on the truth. What we're doing is pointing out the deceptions, and there are many. The Cheney Building, this would be a Richardson, H.H. Richardson construction. one of the three main architects in American history. Look at this. I found this to be very interesting. We have a looking to be a wolf devouring some sort of lizard. That's very... Who puts that on a building? Something else, eh? I guess Richardson does. And that. Now this one, for some reason, really draws my attention. They're calling it the Cult Memorial, also seen it referred to as the Parish Building, I believe. Still stands. This is gone. The spire, looking very tech-like. I don't know, something about the texture of this building draws me in, more so than many of the ones I come across. And then getting some similarities here. This is called the Cult Museum. Dome-like structures, again, looking very tech-like. And the Cult's Armory, not to be outdone. This one dating way back. Yeah, they're looking something out of the Middle East. And they're saying here that the armory went up in flames, but it still stands today, so I don't know. Did they rebuild it? Confusing narrative as usual. Maybe just parts of it. I think maybe just the front part is still going strong. Look at the size of this place, though. And there you have the horse and buggy. The hard-working horse of the 1800s. And this was from that memorial building. I should have had it next to that. For some reason, it jumped up in my my collection. But this is a close-up view of the of that front entry here. So very interesting, looking very old and aged. This would be the State House, a rendering of the State House, with a real exaggeration on all the tech type things that we're seeing on the top of the peaks. We'll get into that a little further. That's just a taste. Courthouse covered in vines. Old stone bridges, no shortage. Remember again the population at the time. Here we have an American Asylum for the deaf and dumb. All sorts of ornaments. Here the Fuller Brush Company. Quite the structure. You may mistake that for the front of a church, but no, it's a brush company. Here it is from the other angle, a little bit further down in time. You can get a picture of what kind of structure that is. Again, remember, population at the time, not much. Again, yeah, so this is an old state house. This is the old state house. We're going to get into the new one, like I said, this one here. But quite a view there, Hartford. So if you've been to Hartford, if you're from there, if you have anything to add to the story, please do. I really enjoy when people add to the richness of the history of the area of these places. I haven't been to so many of these places. I'm from a remote area in Canada. We don't have a lot of this, so I certainly welcome your input. Hartford County Jail, this one's very difficult to find anything on. And look, we have an old people's home. I like the wording, old people's home. They didn't just throw up a structure though, or one or two story. It had to be 1, 2, 3, 4 with this on top. Public high school. You'll see several of these looking very similar. They cared very much about the high schools, so they built them like churches. The Hublin Tower Hotel. Seen this old world look in many places. Long gone, of course. And here another high school. Hard to find a crisp picture of this one as well, so apologies for how blurry it is, but you get the idea. Of course, no shortage of churches. I've probably overlooked many churches in the area. These are thrown up on every corner. Must have been easy to build churches back then. So something not quite right. You get this. These people seem to be living in black and white, everything black and white, but the ghost of an old world all around us, systematically being erased and wiped out over time in the last century, into this century. Another good visual of what it might have looked like. Horse-drawn streetcar. Of course, it had to be horse-drawn until the power was all set up. So this is the narrative. Silly part of the narrative. Memorial Church of the Good Shepherd. I think I misspelled Kenny, but Kenny Memorial Tower. 1898. They were just into making memorial towers and arches. Must have been some skilled immigrants that had moved over. Put them to work right away. La Salette College. We have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-story structure. And again, remember, you look into any of this stuff, and it's you rarely find a start date and a finish date for the build. They just say built in, and they give 1 year, and it's just very sparse. No history. Been scrubbed, wiped clean, edited. The Milner Hotel. You have a basement entrance coming off the street. A municipal building. So, like a city hall, I suppose. Nice photo, really giving you a sense of the old world look on the front. And then, of course, we look at the inside. And if this doesn't blow you away, well, maybe it doesn't because you've seen enough of them to know that this is going on. But try to finish a building in this manner in the modern day and get all these materials. And then a roof with the glass. It's absurd to even consider. But back then it was run of the mill. And here we have a snapshot of the old Newgate prison in the area, and I wanted to include this because I think it really ties in nicely with my research on the circuit board earth, or the melted earth, whatever you want to call it. I think what we're looking at here, and I think it's quite obvious actually, if you have eyes to see. We're looking at some sort of damage that has altered the state of the brick that you see up here. You can see it sloping off into the distance. You could either that, or you can assume that the way they built this was on some sort of angle. So if you're a brickie, you know a brickie. Do they actually lay bricks on an angle like this and then switch the material halfway? Or yeah, evidence everywhere. Bird's eye view, Hartford, Connecticut. I was actually just checking out one of John Levi's latest videos on the bird's eye views. He was checking them out in the Library of Congress. This one from 1877. This is available on the Wikipedia page, and you can go right in on these. They give you all sorts of detail. Really interesting to peruse. 1877, remember, let's check the demographic. So Wikipedia telling us in 1877 we're looking at about 40,000 people living in Hartford. And 40,000 people in the mid to late 1800s had made a town looking like this. Ooh, there's the State House in 1877. According to the narrative, this was just being built at that time. It looked like it's just being built. It wouldn't even have been finished for 1877. So this should all be dug out according to the timeline, so timeline doesn't jive. What do you think? 40,000 people? Picture a town that you know of that size and let me know if they're building like this. And then you tell me you don't smell a rat. So obvious. The only way to avoid it is just to look away. Once you look at it, it can't be denied. Old post office, what a beauty. Really quite a beauty. The Orient Insurance Company building. Another insurance company. Of course, building in the manner of the old world style. There it is there. I think the dome's been removed. Modern day photo really giving you a sense of texture and depth. Weight, maybe? Weight. When I see these types of photos, you can feel the weight of the building materials. That's what I get a sense of. An orphan asylum. Of course, the plan. Yeah, orphan asylum. That's a whole different rabbit hole to go down. It has been covered briefly, but many other researchers have covered it. The Parsons Theatre. I love the old theatres. Love the old theatres there. You'll get a little bit of a view here. That's just a rendering, all I could find on it. But yeah, you get the idea, right? Do they build like this these days? Can they? No, without all sorts of money and time and technology. I'll tell you that much. Traveler's Insurance Building. And this one, stretching way back. Really? Public high school built in 1636? I don't know. This is what the website I found it on said, but... Another high school. And here we have a retreat for insane. I'm sorry. I have to laugh. It is insane. It's all insane. What an insane narrative. They expect us to be insane just to believe this stuff. They have an Asylum street as well, which I found to be pretty interesting. Train station here at the time, looking very old. Remember this photograph taken 100 years ago plus, looking very old for the time. Much older than we're told. Alright, let's get to the beauty of the state capitol building. We're told built 1871 or 72 to 1878. A 6-year window of time to get this thing up. Had no problem achieving that goal. Here's how it looks today. There's the dome and the statues on the dome, because an architect spec'd that out, got the statues built, plonked them all up there, and here we are 150 years later, 140 years, and it's still looking perfect. Beautiful. Here we are on the inside of the dome, looking up at what looks to be like the flower of life. If you look at the pattern up there. Who did that? That's perfect. Laughable. Laughable. What a silly narrative. There it is. You can really see it then. Looking a lot like Michelle Gibson's YouTube handle, I guess you could call it, or picture, image. The flower of life. I'll put that right here next to it so you can see the difference. And a little bit more from the inside, that gilding. 1870s, remember. Let's look at the historical narrative on Hartford for that time. And just a reminder, now we're back in that same time period, so 40,000 people living in Hartford, Connecticut at the time. So they must have had some skilled craftsmen. Of course, you can't say that they brought them all in, because this is going on in many, many places, especially in that early time period in places like Boston and all around the eastern seaboard. This is all part of the narrative. You can't say they poached them from one area, because it was going on everywhere. Look at this. What a spectacular building. I'd be almost speechless. If I wasn't used to this research and narrative, I would be speechless looking at this structure, trying to piece that together and fit that into the mold that they give us for history of the region, of the continent. I'd be dumbfounded. But I'm not. For me, I see so much of it now in this research, it's all just run-of-the-mill. Nothing new, no big deal, see it everywhere. I mean, it's still beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it takes quite a bit to surprise me now after looking at this for a while. Hartford, Connecticut. Beautiful, beautiful building. One of my favorites for the state capitals. And there are some beauties. Oh, not to be outdone, we have a State Library Supreme Court building. There's what it looks like in modern day. See the difference too, not looking... I mean, it gives you a sense of that age, but not having the weight of the modern day photo. This really showing you the difference with how we build today. And how they built then, and how these stand the test of time. And some visuals from the inside of the State Library. Okay. Another temple. And of course the stone bridge work. I always like to feature that. The Morgan Memorial, showing all the signs. Not a great photo, I know. Basement windows. Traveler's Tower. Built in the 20s, we're told, I think. Oh, it says here. 1919. I don't know. Was it? There's the top of the tower. Look at these guys, just workers, right? Get up there, what are they? Probably just cleaning something off. What would it take to build such a structure? A lot of scaffolding, and that's the only real picture I could find of the interior. Getting down to the end of the file here, we're going to take a look at the Trinity University or college, whatever you want to call it. This is supposedly a rendering of a potential plan. Often I think that with these renderings, what we're looking at is what once was, possibly. I don't know, just a thought. There's what maybe remains. The chapel. You can kind of see the dirt work going on here. A bit mud floody, that's what you want to call it. Old. Feeling very old. Alright, the Union Station on fire. In Hartford, no shortage of disaster. We've got a flood, we've had fires in Hartford. Here's that train station. Take a look at the stonework and the ironwork and try to fit that in your little historical box. If you can. Wadsworth Athenaeum. A photo of the woodwork on the interior. Beautiful. Alright, let's end it with a high school. You get the picture though. Not a large place, Hartford. Barely even on the map. The only reason I know Hartford exists is as a young person following sports. They had the Whalers hockey team. But that would be the only reason I even know that Hartford is a town, to be honest, as a young person. So much to see, so much to uncover in the old world, and I think we are still just scratching the surface. So, happy exploring, all of you out there. I hope you enjoyed this video.